Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
There's something that you might not know. You may have heard about it by now, but some of you may not. Neil Gorsuch is the son of the most hated and reviled EPA director in the history of the EPA. Her name is Ann Gorsuch, actually Ann Gorsuch Burford. She was Renoldus Magnus's EPA director, and they hated her. They just despised her. And so, it's unstated. Well, no, it actually isn't. I mean, you've had Andrea Mitchell at NBC. Some others in the drive-bys have mentioned this. They've gone to great pains to say we can't use the sins of the mother against the son. But they are trying to convey that by just saying it. You know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, or the oil derrick doesn't fall far from the sun, or whatever. I mean, they hated the woman. When I first saw the name Neil Gorsuch, I mean, whatever it was weeks ago, I said, I wonder. It's not a common name. And I knew the name. So I looked it up, and Shazam, the guy is the daughter of the most hated EPA director. The Democrats hated EPA director. I mean, she fired people. They accused her of corrupting the agency and polluting America and so forth. It was vicious, folks. It was vicious the way they went after her. And she was fearless. She was absolutely fearless and defiant. Anyway, greetings. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh here behind the golden EIB microphone. Broadcast excellence. 3 hours. We'll have Vice President Pence here in a couple of hours. He'll join us top of the 2 p.m. Eastern hour today to discuss this and whatever else I choose to ask him. And what do we got it for? Segment or two? Pretty much it. Okay. The reaction to Gorsuch across the leftist spectrum has been political and predictable. And it basically is breaking down into two camps. The non-elected left that has ties to the legal community. They work at think tanks and they are thinkers on the judiciary, or they are judges themselves, or they are close to judges, or they're members of law organizations. Every one of them, you can't deny the guy's qualifications. There simply is no way to deny his qualifications. And many of them are saying, look, it's a replacement seat. It's not a net gain. So let's kind of keep our powder dry, and let's not launch everything we've got on this guy, because he's going to get confirmed and he's eminently qualified. But then you go to the elected Democrats, and it's a whole different story, because their lunatic base is demanding rampant, constant lunatic opposition. And they're getting it. Leftist, the protests. You know, I was watching. I know what O'Reilly was doing. I was watching O'Reilly's show last night after the ceremony. Well, I had Fox on. I'm watching O'Reilly, and because I knew he was going to have some people on to talk about this. And O'Reilly, I knew what he was doing. He was playing quasi-ignorant in order to draw his guests out. Like he was saying, how in the world the guy's qualified? How can you not approve the guy, in order to get Dr. Krauthammer to launch, or other guests and so forth? But for people that didn't know what O'Reilly was doing, I'm sure a lot of people, what do you mean? How in the world are they not going to oppose? How can they say he's not qualified? They're Democrats. And he's not qualified because this should have been Merrick Garland's seat, number one. So that's the New York Times, and everybody else is saying this is a stolen seat. The Democrats ought to have this seat. The Republicans refused a vote even on Merrick Garland. He didn't even get a hearing. And so Gorsuch ought to be opposed for that reason alone, tit for tat. But the real reason that they don't want Gorsuch is because he interprets the Constitution. And he will not overturn Citizens United, and he will not automatically guarantee that Roe versus Wade stays intact. I mean, they have their litmus tests, and Neil Gorsuch will not pass a single left-wing litmus test. But I tell you what I think is happening. The left is, and the Democrat Party combined, I think they are marginalizing themselves each and every day. The polling data shows that despite all of the efforts that the media has engaged in and that the Democrats have engaged in, Trump is still a net positive approval rating. They're really not putting a dent in Trump. The American people are not being swayed anywhere like they usually have been during previous Republican administrations on things like this. And the left is really marginalizing itself. And this guy, there are enough people on the left singing his praises as simply a qualified jurist. There literally is no way to say this man doesn't deserve to be a judge. A justice, a judge anywhere. He's just educationally slam dunk, intellectually slam dunk, experience. There simply is no way to say he is not qualified. So to stop him, they have to go to other lengths and try other techniques. And when they do that, they're exposing themselves, I think, for many people for the first time. See exactly just who the Democrat Party is, what it's become, and who some of these people are. There's not a dislikable or unlikable thing about Neil Gorsuch as a human being or as a judge, and yet they're going to, the Democrats are under pressure from their fanatical base to stop this, to oppose this, because they are trying. They're living in their own world. They cannot accept the results of the election. They cannot accept what Trump is doing because he won. They just can't accept any of it. And they do not accept reality. Remember, reality to them is a construct of people who want to deny the left right to participate in things. It's not really real. It's all an artificial creation of an evil majority. And so they can't come to grips with what has happened. Now, they're not going to be able to sustain this emotional pitch forever. Nobody can. At some point, this is going to, it isn't going to go away. It's not going to end. But the energy level and the intensity is going to drop and decline. So simply because it's not humanly possible to maintain this kind of legitimate outrage. They are going to try to maintain the perception that they're outraged. And as it's manifesting itself here in the Gorsuch case, there are protesters outside the Supreme Court last night with prefabricated, pre-made signs. No matter who the nominee was, they were going to use them. And it's what? He's racist. He's extreme. He's anti-female. He's anti-Roe versus Wade, before they even knew who it was. So much of this is simply what I call by rote. It's existing because this is all the left knows to do. It's the only technique they really know how to do, and it's been successful for them, so that's why they don't give it up. And their media allies have enabled them to succeed in destroying Republican after Republican after Republican. But in this case, everybody talks about the nuclear option. And maybe I should take time to explain and define what the nuclear option is. It gets thrown around. Before Harry Reid invoked the nuclear option, the rule is in the Senate, you needed 60 votes to do anything. That rule goes back a long, it's not an original Senate rule. It was added to the Senate after the founding of the country, but it's been around for decades. It's been accepted by both parties. The Senate, compared to the House, is where things are supposed to slow down. By design, founding father design. The founding fathers were hell-bent to stop government action. The Constitution limited government. And that's why people like Obama and Democrats call it a charter of negative liberties, because it limits government. It's an anti-government, pro-citizen document. And the founders wanted to make it hard. Gridlock was part of the design. The founders wanted to make it hard for laws to be passed. They wanted to make it hard for there to be restrictions on the freedom of the people. The House was set up as the direct representatives of the people, not direct democracy, but served there. There are many more of them per district, and in toto, they serve for 2-year terms. The Senate was the equivalent of an aristocracy at the beginning. Senators were not even elected. They were appointed in the early days. Then that changed, and senators did become elected. But the Senate is designed to slow down out-of-control madcap activity elsewhere in the legislative branch, i.e. in the House. And the 60-vote rule was part of that. You have 100 senators, but for anything to happen, you need 60, which makes it really hard for anything to happen. Well, the Democrats under Obama never had 60 votes. For cabinet nominees, you need 60. For judicial nominees, you need 60 until Harry Reid came along in 2013 and blew up the 60-vote rule. And this is called the nuclear option. And Harry Reid decreed, because he ran the Senate Majority Leader, he ran it, and he was able to ramrod rules changes through. So beginning in 2013, 60 votes were no longer needed to affirm presidential appointments, nominations, or judges for every court except the Supreme Court. All you needed was 51 votes. This was so Obama could pack the federal judiciary, because the Democrats, what they can't win at the ballot box, they enshrine in law in the judiciary. They place activist judges on courts all over the country who write law, who create law, not interpret it. The Democrats long ago seized on this opportunity when they couldn't win legislatively, when they couldn't get legislation passed, didn't matter. When controversial cases came up before, that's why Roe versus Wade is the law of the land, not because of legislation. The American people have never voted on it. The representatives of the people have never voted on it. And this is why I think it's so contentious. You know, they have abortion restrictions in the UK. But in the UK, that came after a protracted debate involving the public. And the elected representatives of the public in the House of Commons voted. So there wasn't so much you could, 9 people wearing black robes decide something. And it becomes law, which is how Roe versus Wade became law. You're never going to solve the controversy about it, because the way things normally happen in this country via the elected representatives of the people didn't happen. The Democrats have tried that and succeeded with numerous interpretations of law at various federal courts that have not been interpretations. They have been rather Democrats. I'll give you a great example. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts took Obamacare, the mandate clause, the clause that mandated people buy insurance, which is unconstitutional. The Chief Justice decided he didn't want to be the guy that declared unconstitutional something so important to a president, particularly the first black president. So he rewrote parts of Obamacare, in his opinion, which turned the mandate into a tax, which then gave the federal government the right to do it. That's why everybody was so outraged by it. Well, the left has done this and continues to do this with liberal judges all over the country. The U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is the most famous place where this kind of thing happens. So in service to this, Harry Reid blows up the 60-vote requirement, which is called the nuclear option. And for every judicial nominee except Supreme Court nominees, 51 votes, all that were needed. When he did this, a lot of Democrats said, Mr. Reid, you better think about this, because once you do this, you're now opening the door for the Republicans to do the same thing when they end up back in charge here. And Harry Reid said, I'm not going to be here when that happens because I'm going to retire, so screw it. He wanted Obama to be able to pack the courts, and this is how he did it. So in order to get any judicial nominee passed, 51 votes is all that was required in the Senate, not 60, beginning in 2013. Well, now here we come with the nomination of Judge Gorsuch. 60 votes are still needed because he is a Supreme Court nominee, and Harry Reid didn't change that. But since Harry Reid changed it for everything else, Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, can easily say, well, you know what, I'm just going to apply the nuclear option to Supreme Court nominees. And the Democrats can caterwaller and whine and moan all they want. But there's nothing they can do to stop that. Therefore, there's nothing they can do to stop Gorsuch being confirmed. He's going to be confirmed because there's no way they can really stop him. They can't convince people he's a bad guy. They can't convince people he's a bad judge. They can't convince people he doesn't deserve to be there because they have already unanimously approved every judicial stop on his career. They, by voice vote, unanimously confirmed him to his current job, an appellate judge in the 10th Circuit out in Colorado. 6 states are covered in that circuit. How do they then turn around and say, well, he didn't have a record then, but that was 10 years ago, and he's got a record now, and it's unassailable. So the point is, they're all the Republicans need without the nuclear option is 8 Democrats to join them. And so far, 7 Democrats have said that they are willing to do so, that they do not want the nuclear option triggered. 7 Democrats, many of them up for re-election in 2018 in red states where Trump won, like Claire McCaskill has won. Missouri went for Trump by double digits. She's up for re-election. There was no question Missouri wanted Trump. And if she goes against Trump on something like this, she is imperiling her own reelection. Joe Manchin in West Virginia is another. Right as we sit here today, there are 7 Democrats willing to do whatever's necessary to avoid the nuclear option, which means joining the Republicans. So right now, as we sit here, on paper, nobody's actually voted. They've got 59 votes for the guy in the Senate. As we sit here today, on paper, look, anything can change, but we're speaking theoretically here. Trump today signaled that he's okay with triggering the nuclear option if it's necessary to get this guy confirmed, and so the Democrats, I think, are making a huge tactical mistake by shooing everything they've got at this guy. When he doesn't change the balance of the court, he's replacing Scalia. Have to take a break. We will continue this when we get back. Don't go away. And by the way, I should add, outgoing Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid said that he is confident that he has laid the groundwork for Democrats to nuke the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees if they win back the Senate in November. Remember now, last fall, everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. They thought Hillary was going to win in a landslide. They thought Trump was going to lose in a humiliating fashion. Dingy Harry was retiring. Last October, he said that he was confident that he had laid the groundwork for the Democrats to nuke the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees as well if they won the Senate back last November. He was envisioning Hillary in the White House. He was envisioning Democrats controlling the Senate. He warned, Harry Reid, the outgoing Senate Majority Leader, last October, warned that if a Senate Republican minority tried to block Hillary's Supreme Court nominee, that he was confident that the Democrats would not hesitate to change the filibuster rules again to include Supreme Court nominees. The point is, he wouldn't say this, that he was confident, unless he knew that Schumer was going to pull the trigger and pull the nuclear option. The point is, the Democrats are acting like stuck pigs over the idea that the filibuster would be nuked. In other words, 60 votes done away with, to confirm any of Trump's Supreme Court nominees, when Harry Reid had laid the groundwork for Schumer, his replacement, to do it anyway. Now the Democrats are acting like it would be this great offense, great constitutional assault, be totally unacceptable for him. They were prepared to do it themselves. Once again, rank, smelly hypocrisy pouring out of every cell and orifice of the Democrat Party amoeba. Wait, an amoeba is only a single cell. I've just described their brain collectively. At any rate, Look, I just wanted to get that explained, so when you hear nuclear option, no question what it is now. Back with more in a minute. Hey, by the way, there's a couple of things out there that I want to mention to you that are big news. Before we get back to the Gorsuch situation, this morning, Orrin Hatch did something that we haven't seen Republicans have the courage to do in I don't know how long. Republicans are getting fed up with Democrat delays on the nominations of Tom Price, Health and Human Services, and Mnuchin as the Treasury Secretary. And so and the way they were doing this was by not showing up at the hearings. And the rules are such that if Democrats aren't there, the hearings can't go on. There has to be a certain number there. And they were saying they weren't showing up because these people were lying to them. The nominees were not telling them the truth. They're going to waste their time showing up and listen to these people continue to tell them lies. So Orrin Hatch invoked a rule that said, okay, if you don't want to show up, we're going to have the vote anyway. Screw you. And they did. The Republicans voted and confirmed Tom Price and Mnuchin with not a single Democrat present in the committee. And it's done. It's just that simple. And all the Democrats can do is scream like stuck pigs, and all the media can do is run around and talk about how unfair, anti-democratic the Republicans were and Orrin Hatch are. These people were going to be confirmed anyway. The Democrats are just bollocksing things up because they want to make it hard for the Trump administration to function. And so the Republicans said enough is enough. Went ahead and had the vote. The committee vote on Jeff Sessions took place right before the program started today. What's his name? Al Franken made an absolute fool of himself. When it was his turn to speak, he got into minutia of previous testimony in the hearings. Grassley tried to shut him down and then figured out politically it would make more sense to let Franken drone on. So they let Franken drone on about things anybody was watching. They wouldn't have the slightest idea. It just looked like a maniac, a measured maniac, but nevertheless a maniac. Spoiled sport, everything else. So after Franken finishes, he was reading, which is boring to listen to anyway, from his own typed manuscript. Grassley called for a vote. The vote took all of 2 minutes. And the committee confirmed Sessions with a recommendation. That means the full Senate will vote on Sessions hopefully this afternoon, and maybe tomorrow. So action took place up on Capitol Hill on 3 different nominations before the program started. Also, it is being reported that the White House has blackballed CNN. That the Trump administration is now refusing to send any surrogates, any spokespeople, anybody from anywhere in the administration to CNN because they are fake news. The administration is not going to grant CNN access to any administration officials. Finally, this kind of thing should have been done long ago. The way Republicans are treated by these fake news outfits, there's no reason to show up there and get pummeled unless you have the ability to pummel back. So the Trump White House has told CNN, you're fake news. We're not sending any of our surrogates to your network. Audio sound bites. One of the ways the Democrats are going after Gorsuch. By the way, let me get a little political theater / strategy here. There are 2 schools of thought. I can see it developing, by the way. This is my interpretation analysis based on reading and what I've seen today. On the left, in the activist community, in the community organizer community, in the elected community, in the legal community in the left, you got 2 camps. One camp is, hey, the guy's going to get confirmed. Let's back off. Let's mount some opposition and make him have to work for it in the hearings. But he's going to get confirmed, and we know it. It's not worth using all of our ammo because it doesn't change the balance of the court. The other faction on the left is made up of most of the elected Democrats who want to use every bit of ammunition they have to try to destroy the guy because that's just who they are. And that's what their base is demanding. Their base, their lunatic, genuinely insane base is demanding that there be no tolerance and no acceptance, no niceties, no compassion, no collegiality here. They want this guy destroyed like they want every Republican-related figure destroyed. The elected Democrats have to listen to that base because that base sends them money and votes for them. But in that group of elected officials are 10 senators up for re-election in 2 years that come from red states that voted overwhelmingly for Trump. They are walking a tightrope. Now, since this seat does not change the balance of the court, you've heard it said that Gorsuch is a Scalia clone in terms of his judicial temperament, his view of the Constitution, original intent, and all that. That's not an attempt to take away from Gorsuch's individuality by calling him a Scalia clone. It's the point being made that the balance of the court doesn't change. It's still going to be 5-4. Well, it's going to be 4-4 plus Kennedy. And Kennedy, goes whichever way the Washington Post style section goes. So that's the way it was with Scalia. No real change in balance. The Democrats are fuming that Merrick Garland ought to be there, and this balance ought to go out the window. But Merrick Garland isn't there, so they want the Democrats to score a point, make the Republicans pay by having a tough road or impossible as it can be made road for Gorsuch. The real energy is what this one faction that wants to bide their time and let this guy eventually get confirmed like in March or in 3 months. The non-elected half of the Democrat opposition, they're worried over who the next opening, who will present the next opening by virtue of resignation, retirement, or, dare we say, physical impairment. You have Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's 83. You have others that off and on have talked about retirement. She doesn't want to go anywhere because she doesn't want Trump appointing her replacement, but we're looking at 4 years. If one of the 4 libs, cutting to the chase here, if one of the 4 libs in the court retires, resigns, is incapacitated, and Trump nominates Gorsuch Jr., that's what some of these Democrats want to save their fire for. Don't want to blow everything they've got here on somebody who's going to get confirmed, on somebody they can't damage, on somebody who doesn't change the balance. I think they're misreading all of this. I'm just telling you the way they're looking at this. They don't know anything but launching everything they have. Their primary technique for achieving political victory is precisely to destroy political opposition. They are not interested in debate. They're not interested in the arena of ideas and prevailing in debate. They want to clear the playing field of any opposition. They do this by impugning, by destroying, not just careers, but lives, families, if they have to. And half of them want to go for the throat for Gorsuch, and the other half say, no, it'd be a waste of resources. Here's the thing. They're not going to be able to avoid looking like they're launching everything. To casual viewers and observers, the degree of opposition to Gorsuch is going to be profound enough, and it's going to be predictable. He hates women. He's a white heterosexual male. He can't possibly relate to America. Wacko things like that. People are going to see it for what it is, and they're not going to think that it's tempered. They're going to think, my God, the Democrats are launching everything they've got. How many times can you launch everything you've got? I mean, how many times can you cry wolf? How many times can you claim a Republican nominee hates women, hates gays, hates transgenders, hates this, hates that, hates Hispanics, hates blacks, racist, sexist, bigot? How many people can you accuse of doing that before it begins to sound like a yawner? In this climate, with the Trump administration thriving and prevailing and public opinion approval numbers on the positive side for Trump, I don't think they have the slightest idea of the damage they're doing to themselves because it's never damaged them before. They've always profited from this kind of lunacy. They've always succeeded, not always, but more often than not, they've been able to take out Republicans because the media never chides them. The media never criticizes them. The media never castigates them. The media is them. The media and they are the same. The media promotes their lunacy and their insanity and their unhinged nature. But after a while, when that's all the Democrats do, no matter the issue, no matter the person, no matter the legislation, eventually it's just going to lose its impact. Because people are going to eventually say, wait a minute, everybody can't be a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. And you might think, well, that should have happened by now, Rush, because they've been doing it. Yeah, but the lay of the land is different now. This election, elections have consequences. We had an entirely different electorate show up in 2016. An entirely different electorate, and they are happy. They are satisfied. They're not afraid. They're not frightened. They're not worried that Trump's going to cave. So I say let them be who they are and let them bring it on. I think the people on the left who want the Democrats to temper this on Gorsuch and kind of dial it back a little bit, I think they're going to be frustrated because I don't think the Democrats know how to dial it back. Pelosi is who she is. Schumer is who he is. All of these Democrats and the media, they are who they are. I'll give you an example, some audio sound bites when we come back, and then we get to your phone calls. Don't go away, folks. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was watching Judge Gorsuch make his remarks after President Trump had nominated him last night in the East Room of the White House. And he said something that I thought was remarkable. And I thought it was not just remarkable, but extremely helpful for his upcoming confirmation hearings. Let me see if I can explain to you, because I like to make the complex understandable. Judge Gorsuch made the point that he is unhappy with some of his own results, with some of his own rulings, make him unhappy or dissatisfied. Now, I knew exactly what that meant, but I wondered how many people watching knew. Not questioning people's intelligence, but rather understanding really what he meant by that. What he meant was, it was his way of explaining his judicial independence and the fact that he approaches every case as strictly a student and interpreter of the law. And what he meant was, when he said that several of his own decisions or results disappointed him, it means the law required him to find in a way he personally disagreed. But his personal, he didn't say this is what he meant, his personal political biases or opinions are irrelevant when it comes to applying the law and judging a case. And I thought, that is going to be a magic bullet for his confirmation hearings, because that sums it all up. I mean, there's not much you can accuse a guy of when he's willing to admit that he is perfectly fine with judgments that violate his own wishes. That's not how the left does it, folks. That's what packing the court for them is all about. That is what using the judiciary to advance the liberal agenda is all about. They do explicitly rule on their political biases, not the law. That's what judicial activism is. That's what it's called, judicial activist. Activist judges are judges that don't interpret the law. They find and adjudicate results that advance their own personal political policy beliefs. And that is precisely how the left does it. And that's what they demand of judges. And that's when they say a judge is out of the mainstream. which is one of the favorite things of Chuck Schumer to say. He's an extremist. He's out of the mainstream. What that means is he will not find for the liberal agenda in his rulings. That's exactly what it means. But nobody calls them out on that. The media doesn't call it out. They just leave it standing as some poor guy's in the mainstream, is out of the mainstream, is an extremist. What that means in liberal speak is he's not going to find for us. He's not going to rule that in a way that implements our agenda. And Gorsuch admitted it by saying some of my own rulings disappoint me. I'm sure many people said, well, then why did you rule that way? Not knowing what he meant. But he had to find according to the law, not his own personal beliefs. And so that's why he's going to be called an extremist. That's why he'll be said to be out of the mainstream. Here, we have a little montage here. This is one of the ways, the knee-jerk reaction of the left to oppose the guy.
Many Democrats refer to this as a stolen seat.
Some Democrats are calling this a stolen seat.
This is, in some way, a stolen seat.
The stolen seat, quote, a stolen seat.
Referring to this as a stolen seat.
Their base calls this a stolen seat. It's not a stolen seat. It's Scalia's seat.
Stolen seat. No, it's not Scalia's. It's Merrick Garland's. Merrick Garland. Obama nominated Garland. Garland shouldn't have been should have gotten hearings, and he should have been confirmed. But the Republicans didn't do it, and they stole it from Garland and gave it to this guy Gorsuch. That's what the New York Times even editorializes that way. Now this is classic. This is Nancy Pelosi last night, CNN town hall with Pelosi. Jake Tapper speaking with her about Trump's nomination of Judge Gorsuch. We're only going to be talking about the Supreme Court, but it did just happen. Do you care to comment, Madam Pelosi?
What I do want to say about this is that elections have ramifications, and here is a living, breathing example of it. The president, in his first appointment to the court, and hopefully his only appointment to the court, has appointed someone who has come down on the side of corporate America versus class action suits on securities fraud. He's come down against employees' rights. Clean air, clean water, food safety, safety in medicine, and the rest. If you care about that.
I played the wrong bite. I've got the heading up here, and I think what follows it is but it's not. The second bite here is what I want to display, where I don't have time to play it, but she says if you breathe air, if you drink water, if you eat food, if you take medicine, this guy is a bad judge. I'll save the bite and play it for you when I have a moment. Don't go away. No, I've got a heading here on the roster. Pelosi on Gorsuch, if you eat or drink or breathe, then the Gorsuch nomination is bad. But the next bite is not that. It's the second bite under the heading. And so that's the only thing that went wrong in this hour. I got to change the way this is done because this is so misleading. And I am America's chief communicator. It's embarrassing, but I'll play the right bite when we get back here, folks. It'll be before you know it. Hey, how you doing? Great to have you back. El Rushbo, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. However, always tempered with the stark reality in which we all find ourselves today. You can always count on me never to lose that perspective, and that will be to your benefit. It never is pessimism, it's just reality. Sometimes people won't want to hear it, such as what I have to say coming up here in just a moment. I think you'll find it fascinating, but you might really not want to hear it, although I may be wrong about that. Anyway, phone number 800-282-2882, email address lrushbo@eibnet.com. Now, get the right Pelosi bite is number 5, okay? So have that standing by here. I checked the email during the break, and I have a lot of people think that I am overly optimistic on the tactics the left employs all the time, failing them because people get wise to it. And I understand, look, we've had a lifetime of the left defining these narratives and getting away with it. And it's become the way in which we function and operate, and we strategize. We know what the left's going to do. We have a pretty good idea what they're going to get away with, and thus what we have to push back on. Here's what's different to me, and I admit that this is hopeful and not full-fledged confident. Whereas when Obama's in the White House and the Republicans react to him, or I say something, or he nominates somebody to Republicans to react to it, the Democrats would go predictably bat excrement, and they would start launching on how the nominee or the person in question or the target, whoever it was, racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, hateful, anti-American, out of the mainstream, extremist, whatever it is. And over all these years, our side would never push back against it. The media would join the chorus, and that would become the narrative. Democrats mainstream and sane, Republicans minority extremist wackos, and racist, sexist bigots to boot. What's changed now is the Democrats don't control anything. We do. We control the White House. We control the House. We control the Senate. They still have the embedded bureaucracy. And this is why I was so frosted at Trump. It wasn't the fact that Sessions hadn't yet been confirmed, that this renegade acting attorney general did what she did, this Sally What's-Her-Face. It's because Trump doesn't realize yet what he's up against. He knows he's got opposition, but he doesn't understand ideological opposition. That woman was not just practicing or acting out some moral code. She was a political activist. She's always been a political activist. She's not a lawyer in that sense. She's a political activist. She's a leftist. She's put in there to advance the leftist agenda and arrest anything else. She should not have been there. Trump should have broomed everybody of appointed nature out of the DOJ and every other one of these bureaucracies on day one. I'm hopeful, as this opposition continues, that Trump becomes more, I don't want to say learned and aware, because he's not stupid by any stretch. It's just he doesn't think in ideological terms. He doesn't see Pelosi as a ravaged, insane liberal. He just sees her as somebody maybe anti-business who doesn't know what she's talking about and is wrong, but he doesn't see her the way she sees him. She sees him as an enemy that threatens everything she believes in, who has to be destroyed. Trump does not see these people that way. But they're out there trying to destroy him and everybody in his administration multiple times a day. Here is Pelosi. This is what she said on CNN when the nomination of Gorsuch had been made. And Jake Tapper is talking to her and asks her for comment on the guy.
He comes down on the side of felons over gun safety, hostile to women's reproductive rights, Hobby Lobby case, for example. The list goes on and on. Criticized progressives for bringing cases that relate to LGBT progress, taking those cases to the courts. So it's a very hostile appointment. Hail fellow, well met, lovely family, I'm sure. But as far as your family is concerned, and all of if you breathe air, drink water, eat food, take medicine, or in any other way interact with the courts, this is a very bad decision.
Then it's insane. It's just flat out insane. If you breathe air, we all do. If you drink water, we all do it. It's not a choice. We have to. Some of you too much bourbon, but still, got to have water. Eat food. No choice there. Have to do it or we die. If you take medicine, only those you can afford it because the pharmaceutical companies suck. Or if you in any other way interact with the courts, this is a very bad decision. So just by your doing things you need to stay alive, this guy is going to kill you. Just by you doing what you have to do to stay alive, this guy is your enemy. He comes down on the side of felons over gun safety. See, the effort to put Gorsuch on the defensive has already begun. Now, there are two factions on the left. One faction made up of the think tank, legal association left. They don't want to go after this guy this way because they think it's wasted ammunition. He's going to get confirmed. It doesn't change the balance of the court. People like Pelosi and Schumer cannot help themselves. This guy is an enemy of the state. He is an enemy who must not be, even though he has been approved previous times unanimously by voice vote, doesn't matter. Because Supreme Court is where the left advances their agenda. And there's not going to be anybody over their dead bodies that gets in there and can have a chance at stopping them implement their agenda. And so this guy, hostile to women's reproductive, that's the Hobby Lobby case. Look, I'm not going to take the time at this moment to get into the minutiae and details of all these cases. That's going to come later when the hearings begin. The timing to do these things will be right. I want to address something larger here. And it's based on the emails I got during the break at the top of the hour. People thought that I'm being a little overly optimistic that the left is marginalizing itself by virtue of being who they are, and that people will eventually see it for what it is and stop being affected by it. People say, Rush, some of the emails, all my life they've gotten away with it. I mean, if people were going to see it for what it is, it would have happened by now. I'm sorry, Rush, but there's no evidence the left doesn't get away with this stuff. Well, there is. The election. If the left got away with this stuff, Trump would not be president today. That's just one example. But I understand your point. Look, I'm not full-fledged confident that the libs are going to marginalize themselves. What's different is that they're going to do it all the time now. When Obama was president and they ran the Senate or were in charge of things, they weren't reacting to every news story this way. But now they are. Multiple times a day, they are demonstrating their insanity and how unhinged and absent reality they are. Every day, multiple times. They lost the election. Everybody knows they lost the election. But here's the difference, folks, and this is where I have to understand the people who have emailed me who think that I'm being overly optimistic. There's no question that a certain number of people over time are going to tune out the Pelosi's and the Schumers and the CNNs and all of the other leftist activists who are going bat excrement crazy. But the media never does tune them out, meaning you and me and a bunch of other citizens out there might begin to ignore the left and might think, what a bunch of nutcases, and just stop paying attention to them. But the media never will. And that, I have to admit, is a fundamentally crucial point. The media will never get tired of them. In other words, they are always going to be the lead story for the media. Whatever extremism is happening, whatever reaction to whatever Trump's doing, the more extreme, the more leftist it is, the media is going to top line it, front page it, lead with it. So the media will never tune it out. The media will always be using it and trying to capitalize it. So even while you've tuned it out, you're not going to be able to avoid it because the media is going to be all over it. And in this way, because of the media, never tiring of it, and because of the media actually living off of this insanity on the left, they figure that even when they lose, they win because they maintain control of the narrative. And it happens this way. Let me give you a demonstration or illustration of how it happens. Let's say the Obama nominates a judge. He's president, nominates Sotomayor, or take your pick, to be a federal court judge or Supreme Court justice. Those nominees, during their confirmation hearings, are free to say everything they believe, that they are committed to Roe versus Wade and abortion rights, that they would reverse Citizens United on the first day they were on the bench, that they would, if they could, limit the Second Amendment. They are permitted, because of the media cover they get, to be upfront and honest about every restrictive, anti-constitutional thing they would do, and there is never any criticism of it. They can stand for every bit of anti-constitutionalism they want, and they are heralded and portrayed as heroic and eminently qualified. Our nominees, on the other hand, are never able to do the opposite. And you're going to see it here with Judge Gorsuch. Judge Gorsuch is going to have to temper what he believes and temper what he says by, in fact, saying things like, yes, I am very sometimes disappointed with my own rulings. That's signaling to these nutcase Democrats that he's not an ideologue, that he will find against his own beliefs by following the law. The leftist nominees never have to pledge following the law. Leftist nominees never have to promise to follow the law. In fact, they do the opposite. They not only get away with, they are required to explain how they're going to set the law that has been made in mistaken and error correctly. They're going to ensure Roe versus Wade. They're going to try to get rid of the Second Amendment, and whatever the leftist agenda is. So our nominees in the past have even been chosen on their ability to be unspecific. Our nominees, some of them, previous Republican presidents, have actually chosen nominees for their ability to not tie themselves in knots and incriminate themselves in front of these Stalinists that are the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee. So the way that the media and the Democrats have set up the game is our nominees have to say, my personal views are irrelevant. And of course I will enforce the settled law. And I will not overturn precedent. And I will respect everything you idiot leftists have done to transform this country, whether I agree with it or not. Our nominees have to say a variation of that in their hearings. In other words, left-leaning decisions are sacrosanct and must be enforced. They are the mainstream. And if you, as a Republican nominee, do not signal that you're okay with that, then you are going to be labeled as out of the mainstream and extreme. So the left's out-of-control, unhinged opposition is not just about knocking out one nominee or another. It's about controlling the narrative. It's about controlling the parameter, the boundaries in which nominations are considered. And this, hopefully, will change. But right now, it is the way it is. Republican nominees have to be very guarded and cannot in any way betray what their ideological beliefs are, whereas Democrat nominees not only can, they're required to. Anthony Kennedy, Roberts, they can't portray what they're really going to do once they get on the bench. They have to keep that a secret. If what they're going to do is actually interpret the law, it's a real. But now all that's reversed here. The Democrats don't have the votes to stop these nominees, especially if the nuclear option is enacted. But still, you watch, the hearings will take place much as I have described them here. Gorsuch is going to show up, presumed to be out of the mainstream. He's going to be presumed to be an extremist because of the Hobby Lobby case and because he defends the Second Amendment and all this. And in order to get through this, he's going to have to show his respects to the lunatic leftist extremists that are the Democrats on the committee. And these parameters have to change. So whereas, the left does have a chance of causing people to tune out because they just are going to be going crazy 24/7. There still is the success that they have had in defining and setting the terms under which judicial confirmation hearings take place. And this is the intent here is to fully limit the options Republican presidents have in choosing Supreme Court or federal district court nominees. As I say, presidents have to pick people that are going to be able to go up there and walk this tightrope, whereas liberal nominees don't have to worry about any of this. The more liberalism they say they're for, the better it is. But they are scared to death of Gorsuch because he's so smart. He has impeccable credentials. Folks, this guy, his educational credentials, his resume, his CV is unassailable. This guy, they would kill if he were on their side. They would be having orgasms if they could get this guy on their side. That's how brilliant he is. And now he's backed by Trump, who is fearless and is out to blow this whole system up. And it may change the rules, the way the game is played. And that's what we're keeping an eye on and hoping happens. Don't go away. Okay, time to hit the phones. So we're going to start in Detroit with Gina. Gina, how you doing?
I'm great. Good afternoon, Mr. Limbaugh. Listen, my question is, do you feel that the Democrats are making their jobs any less valuable by not showing up to work, and that the Republicans are still getting the job done?
You are obviously referring to the Orrin Hatch committee, where he went ahead and authorized the vote
right.
For both Tom Price and Mnuchin, precisely because the Democrats refused to show up. And so he said, the hell with it. If you're not going to show up, we're going to do the vote anyway. We don't need you here. We're just going to do it. We're going to fall for your delaying tactics any longer.
Exactly. I mean, I feel that if we didn't show up for work, what would happen? We would be fired. So let's drain the swamps even further and get rid of them all.
I wish it was that easy. Hey, you didn't show up for the hearing. You're gone. I would love that. But you're asking me if I think that by not showing up that they are going to harm themselves or damage themselves?
Correct.
No.
You don't think that their constituents are going to think next time around, well, you're not even showing up to do the job?
Their constituents are going to applaud them for trying to stop this. That's what they were trying to do by not showing up. They were continuing to delay the hearings. They were claiming that it was a waste of time to listen to these nominees. They're lying to us. And so they had submitted additional questionnaires for the nominees to fill out. They were waiting on those to be delivered. No. The Democrats are not going to suffer for this kind. This is, Gina, precisely why I say the objective is going to have to be to continue to beat them and politically beat them, because we can't rely on the fact that they're, we do have the election last year. That's still the wild card about public opinion and how it has shifted. And they didn't do themselves any favors. Let's just put it that way. Here is John in Port Huron, Michigan. You're next, and it's great to have you, sir. Hi.
Hi, Raj. Thank you. If I may, for a minute, be your unpaid spokesperson and talk directly to the emailers who don't buy your take so much that things are different now and that the voting public, people who put Trump in there, aren't just going to buy into the Democrats. May I do that for a moment?
Sure.
Because I was one of those weak in the need people. You propped me up many times when I was thinking this is over, it's gone. And this is where I'm actually going to use your arguments over 30 years, or at least 20 years, to talk to these folks, because I was one of them. Things are totally different now. For 20 years, you've been begging, clamoring, prodding Republicans, particularly in Congress, to fight back, to stand up, to make some points, not just back down, go along to get along and take the high road. And, of course, to the Democrats, the high road for a Republican simply means don't defend yourself. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And you have been saying this forever. And you look at what the quote-unquote high road has gotten the Republican Party. It got George H.W. Bush from 90% approval after Desert Storm to being beaten by an unknown, governor from Arkansas. It got his son to go from 90% approval after 9/11 to 30% approval when he left office. And the most recent example of taking the high road, being classy, just figuring people will figure it out without responding was Mitt Romney. Up by 7 or 8 going into the thing and then beaten.
I can't object to much of this, I must tell you.
Well, I appreciate that, because I am your unpaid spokesperson talking directly to these people who I once was one. In fact, not probably the day before the election, I was still one of them. But here's the thing. Here's what's different. And you know where this is going. You have a guy who doesn't only defend himself, he fights back. He says stuff to them, to the Democrats, to his opposition, that you would want said. You cringed a little. You were so not used to a guy, and I'll give you specific examples, taking on the Clintons, both in Bill Clinton's personal behaviors while in office and, of course, their thievery with the Clinton Foundation over the years. You almost, even though you wanted it for years, you got so trained as a Republican to not hear that, you almost cringed at first and then went, oh, my God, it's about time. Once you got over the cringe factor because we were so trained not to do that, then it started rolling and rolling and rolling, and that's different now. And he is not stopping. He is going to continue to do this. Now, the second leg to this, what's different, and you brought this up, that the media will be out there selling it for Pelosi and Schumer. Their voices may get, people like us may get sick of it, but they can pick it up. Here's what Trump has done, which is genius. They are the only group that has a lower approval rate than Congress, and he has taken them on head-on with the same type of results for people like me and probably some middle-of-the-road Democrats and some nonpartisans, people never voted. And
but don't forget the low-information crowd out there. They're always a factor.
They're always a factor, but that bubble group, me, the people who may have voted the Reagan Democrats, the Labor Democrats, the same ones who voted for him in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, who never would have done that, they get it now. And when he keeps doing this and pointing it out and saying, hey, aren't you the network whose former anchor gave talking points after she became the DNC chairman, questions and debate, blah, 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 blah. He's kept it up and kept it up. Here's my analogy. The Democrat Party itself is like, say they're like white-collar criminals who've ripped off a local group of people in a small community. That person then goes out and hires an attorney. Okay, they hire an attorney who has a stellar reputation, who everyone respects, to give them, what's that word they used to use, gravitas? In this scenario, in this analogy, what they've done is they've gone out and hired an attorney who just got out of prison for stealing money from the trust fund of their clients. So they're going to rely on a group of people now that were going down the drain credibility-wise anyway, and Trump is just hitting the accelerator. He is just putting the pedal to the metal.
One quick question before I move on, because this has been an excellent message to the emailers, and I will explain that when the call is completed. Do you have any fear, or is there any part of you at any time worried that Trump is going to not cave, but react and in a bad way, a way you wouldn't like, to say, take a pick, the reaction to his executive order on vetting immigrants? It's so outrageous. It's so intense. Apple is threatening to sue Trump. All these other groups out there going bonkers. The whole state of California says, screw you, Trump. We're going all sanctuary, not just city, the whole state. Are you worried at some point that Trump's going to back down a little bit to try to appease these people?
I'm not afraid that he's going to back down. My fear used to be that, he better count, the old training. It's like Pavlov's dog. We're not used to getting what we want so much and over the top that we're thinking, calm it down. I'm not in either one of those camps anymore, because what he knows is 55, 60, 65, 70% of the people agree with these things.
Yeah, let me tell you what I'm running into, though. And let me tell you, ask you if you've run into this. I'm running into some citizens, not people in politics. They're voters. They're disappointed, even though everything you describe is happening, and they love it. They love the pushback. They love the defiance. They love Trump in their face. But they're disappointed that the media isn't changing. They're disappointed. Wait a minute now. They're disappointed that seemingly not enough members of the public are getting it. In other words, they're sitting out there waiting for a vast majority of people to go with Trump, to abandon the Democrats, and they're including some media in that. And I've been up against this my whole career, and it's frustrated me to no end that people are not willing to pronounce success until the media agrees with us. And I'm still hearing it out there among people.
Okay, can I respond to that?
Well, yeah, that's why I asked you a question. But I got a minute here. You got to do it quick. Brevity is the soul of wit.
I can do it in 30 seconds. We're a church, not a cult. We want as many people to keep us going, but if you don't want to join us, go ahead, do whatever you want to do. We just proved in November that we don't need them. It's upsetting, it's irritating. I tell my mother, don't watch CNN, don't watch the protests. It's like putting your tongue in a canker sore. What's the point? We won. The polls of the people that put him in power are still there, and it's growing. And the more foolish they look, as you're saying, Rush, don't get upset like I used to, that they look foolish and idiotic and they don't understand logic. Be happy.
I hear you. I see some people that are disappointed. They think with this big a slam dunk win by Trump and this overwhelming demonstration of success that people would wake up and join us. and they see all this opposition on TV, and they see the evidence of the country being divided, and they think, oh my God, it isn't working. They probably have, an 85-year-old mother or mother-in-law living with them who's done nothing but watch McNeil Lehrer every night, followed by Walter Cronkite and then Dan Rather, and that's all the old woman's exposed to, and is sitting at home complaining and whining and moaning about this Trump guy. So there may be some explanations for it. But look, I appreciate the call out there, John. Port Huron, Michigan's where you're from. I'll explain what he was doing, talking to the emailers, in case you weren't here at the top of the hour. Don't go away. I'll tell you what, old John out there from Port Huron, Michigan, he's a pretty good spokesman. Did you hear his description of watching CNN? Like putting your tongue on a canker sore? That was good. What he was talking about, I expressed an opinion in a previous hour that I think because the left lost and because they're going bat excrement crazy all the time, I mean multiple times, it's their normal state. At some point, people are going to tire of it. They're going to see it for what it is. They're going to shoot their emotional ammo. They're going to be out of it, and people are going to just tire of it. And after a while, all of their allegations about Trump are going to cease to have much impact. And I got some emails during the break at the top of the hour, people who thought that I was being overly optimistic about this and wanted me to temper my thoughts on that with some reality. And their basic point was, yeah, well, they may slink away, but the media never. The media is going to constantly be using the left for the lead items on the news. And that's true. I mean, the left can be as bat excrement crazy as they want, and they're still going to be the fodder for what the lead items, television news are above the fold on newspapers, covers of magazines and the blogs and everything. So the media is still going to be portraying this extreme, wacko, insane liberalism as the mainstream order of the day in terms of the narrative. No matter how crazy it gets, no matter how insane, no matter how lunatic it is. And that happens to be true. This was back to CNN's town hall. This audio soundbite number 6. Let me make sure it's actually in some. Headline: Town hall plant cannot read questions she was given on Trump's executive order. Okay, I want to make sure I play you the right bite. Looks like, okay. So what we have here, a Yemeni. For those of you on real into somebody from Yemen, which is in the Middle East, a terrorist hot spot. A refugee from Yemen, a woman named Bushra, is asking a question at the CNN town hall. And she has difficulty reading it off her smartphone. Now, they're trying to portray the woman as spontaneous. She showed up at the CNN town hall because she's outraged at what Trump is doing. She's outraged at Trump's executive order. She is outraged. She is fit to be tied. And, of course, what she really is a plant. She's a CNN plant, a Pelosi plant, and she can't even read the question they gave her, much less make it sound like it's spontaneous, or so I'm told is on the bite. I hope it's on the bite that way. Let's see.
My mom is now recently living in a destroyed house because of the airstrikes, and she wasn't able to come to the United States because of this decision that Donald Trump did. So my question is, what can what is the democratic leadership could help us? What could you help us and our people to ensure that more families are not torn apart?
You know what this reminds me of? Mr. and Mrs. Khizr Khan, at the Democrat National Convention. They were able to read their lines. But this poor woman from Yemen, they went out and found her. She's a plant. This is exactly what the Democrats do. Phony baloney, plastic banana, good time rock and roll. So they go out and get this babe, and she supposedly is outraged over Trump's ban. She's outraged. Her family's going to be torn apart, and the world is going to end, and the bombs are going to fall, and there's going to be explosions, and oh no! And she can't read the question right, off of her smartphone. That's where the question is. So Pelosi's, it's okay. It's okay. Here is this Pelosi's answer? Well, it suffices as such. Here's the
If you
next one.
detect some impatience in my voice, it's because your family is suffering because our president is reckless, and his administration is incompetent. We follow the lead of our spiritual leaders when the Pope talks about it is unchristian to turn away refugees.
Stop the tape. You people want to excoriate the Pope because he's pro-life. What do you mean you listen to the Pope? When the Pope speaks, he's one of your inspirational leaders? Anyway, you know what this is? This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. This is a totally manufactured, phony, scripted event that is made to look organic and spontaneous, and that the outrage is genuine and that it is heartfelt. And CNN just happened to come along when it was happening and televised, when the whole thing instead is a scripted TV show. And this is how it's done. This is how the media works with the left to create a false illusion of genuine and organic human behavior when it's all scripted, and most of the people, many of them, are actually actors. Not professional actors, but they're recruited because they look the part. They're given lines to utter in the form of questions of their great respected Democrat leaders. The whole thing is phony, folks, literally phony, and the media helps give it weight and reality. And we will be back. Don't go away. Vice President Mike Pence is going to be our guest as we kick off the next busy broadcast hour. In just 5 minutes or so. So hang on for that. We will continue in mere moments. Don't go away, folks. Yes, a little private banter going on here amongst us, ourselves here, the staff. The EIB Network. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back. It's great to have you here to the fastest 3 hours in media. We have the line established. We have the connection. Speak to the vice president. He's up on Capitol Hill as we speak, introducing Judge Gorsuch around. Various senators. He's with Senator Ayotte, Kelly Ayotte. As well. And as soon as he has a moment to break away and come to the phones, we'll have him on. In the meantime, I want to share with you a little anecdote. It's actually a tweet about Judge Gorsuch that demonstrates not only his judicial temperament, but his sense of humor. And it's a tweet regarding his dissent in a case where his court approved the arrest of a 12-year-old. The court that he was on, the other judges approved of the arrest of a 12-year-old for making fake burps in school. And he dissented from this ruling. And here is a portion of what Judge Gorsuch wrote. If a 7th grader starts trading fake burps for laughs in gym class, what's a teacher to do? Order extra laps? Detention? A trip to the principal's office? Maybe. But then again, maybe that's too old school. Maybe today you call a police officer. And maybe today the officer decides that instead of just escorting the now compliant 13-year-old to the principal's office, an arrest would be a better idea. So out come the handcuffs, and off goes the kid to juvenile detention. My colleagues suggest that the law permits exactly this option, and they offer 94 pages explaining why they think that's so. Respectfully, I remain unpersuaded. 94 pages explaining why a 12-year-old faking burps in gym class should be arrested and cuffed and taken away to juvie. We mentioned earlier that the nuclear option has Oh, we have the Vice President now. Vice President Pence, thank you for making time for us today, sir.
Rush, it is great to be back with you, and I'm really honored to be joining you from the 18 acres of the White House.
Oh, you're back at the White House now. I thought I saw earlier you were up on Capitol Hill with Judge Gorsuch escorting him around.
I was. We started out in Leader Mitch McConnell's office, but he's doing his initial rounds today, and I have to tell you, the president's decision to nominate Judge Gorsuch, someone exceptionally well qualified, an extraordinary background, a man of the West, who I know will be faithful to the Constitution and apply the law as written. It's deeply humbling for me to be even a small part of that, Rush.
You know, you've always said that from the first moment I spoke to you after you had accepted the vice presidential nomination. You have spoken of the humility you feel for all this, and it sounds like it hasn't changed at all.
Well, it's for me to be a part of the administration of someone who I truly do believe is going to make America great again. And you look at the early days of this administration. You look at the decisive leadership. I like to say President Trump is in the promise-keeping business. He's from literally day one. He's been doing exactly what he told the American people he would do. But last night, to be there on the front row as he walked Judge Neil Gorsuch to the podium and introduced a man who I truly do believe has the character, the courage, and the background to be an extraordinary justice of the Supreme Court was especially meaningful to me.
All right. Now, I already had a question for you to go here on Judge Hardiman, and I was going to ask you a question about it. And I was just watching Spicer and the press briefing, and he was asked why President Trump brought both Hardiman and Gorsuch to Washington. And he said, we didn't bring Hardiman here. Hardiman was never here. We never brought both of these people here. So it's another example of fake news. It's totally fake news. It's amazing how much fake news. Now, I'm not just saying this because you're on the phone here. I have a story that documents 30 different examples of fake news in 5 days. And I haven't had a chance to go through it on the air with people yet, but it's astounding. What I was going to ask you was...
Well, I could get you to 31 if you want.
Okay, give me 31.
Well, no, there was about a week ago, we opened up a paper in New York, and they were reporting about something that was on my website or my Facebook page, and it was a fake Facebook page, and that newspaper and one network actually ran with it for a while and took it down. But I think it's one of the reasons people cherish and appreciate your voice in the national debate is because when they hear it on Rush Limbaugh, they know it's a fact, they know it's coming straight at them, and they know it's backed up by the truth.
Well, we try. Thank you very much. What I was going to ask you about was this: if there was any strategy in choosing Judge Gorsuch over any of the others on the president's list based on the Democrats. Early on, the Democrats telegraphed that they're going to go all the way in stopping whoever the president chose. And was that a factor in determining which of the 20 on the list you decided to go with?
Yeah, I don't think the president based his decision on anything other than finding the best qualified person in the country to succeed. He's always quick to say to me, not replace. He said, you can't replace Justice Scalia, but you can succeed him. I think his focus was finding the best possible person who would bring a wealth of experience to the fore and be faithful to the Constitution, just as he had promised the American people he would do in making this appointment. And I think these other considerations, I think they make great fodder on cable news panels, but at the end of the day, every conversation that I had with President Trump about this is, I want the best judge, and I want to keep my word to the American people to appoint someone in the tradition of the late and great Justice Antonin Scalia.
Are you preparing in any specific way for variations on the kind of conduct you could face during these hearings. They could go one of two ways here. They could figure, meaning the Democrats, they could figure, look, this is a replacement seat. The balance doesn't change. The man's eminently qualified, and save most of their ammo for the next pick. Or do you expect them to do everything they can to stop Judge Gorsuch?
Well, let me say we hope for the best. And frankly, I think the president and our entire team are heartened by some of the early response. I think at this count, 7 Democrats in the United States Senate have said that they believe Judge Gorsuch deserves an up or down vote.
I have the names right here. They are Blumenthal, Chris Coons of Delaware, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Manchin, West Virginia, McCaskill, Missouri, Tester, Montana, and Durbin, Illinois. Except for Durbin, Trump won practically all the states those senators are in, many of them up for re-election in 2018.
Well, sure, but you can understand. I mean, that's a very diverse list of people that are nevertheless recognizing that look, the Senate has a role here under the Constitution. As I walked Judge Gorsuch into the Capitol building today, he sat down with Leader Mitch McConnell, and he's been meeting with members of the Senate. He's going to meet, if they take the meeting, he's going to meet with all 100 members of the Senate, Republicans and Democrats alike. They'll have hearings in the coming weeks, and the Senate has a job to do. But at the end of the day, I think we're encouraged by the fact that so many Democrats here within 24 hours of the announcement are recognizing that there needs to be a vote on Judge Gorsuch, and that would be very consistent with the timetable and the way that both President Obama's first-term appointments to the court and President Clinton's first-term appointments to the court were considered. Whether it was President Clinton with Breyer or Ginsburg, or whether it be Obama with Kagan and Sotomayor, those nominees moved through the process in a period of 60 or 70 days. There was no filibuster. They were given an up or down vote. And in every single case, every one of those nominees received bipartisan support.
You can't be expecting that here. You can't. I mean, that you're talking about the Republicans showing Obama and Clinton respect in their first terms. But, Mr. Vice President, these people are already claiming that this is a stolen seat, that this is Merrick Garland's seat, that this guy, Gorsuch, does not deserve this seat, that this seat should go to whoever Obama wanted to have it.
Well, let's be clear. This seat, this court, and this government belongs to the American people. And the decision by the majority to essentially hold off on considering an 11th hour vacancy on the court, put that decision in the hands of the American people. And they elected in President Trump someone who not only created a list, but he created a framework. He said, I want someone that's exceptionally qualified, someone with an extraordinary academic background. I want someone of character and courage, and I want someone who will be faithful to the Constitution in a manner consistent with Justice Scalia. Hillary Clinton was offering something very different. You remember in those debates, Rush, Hillary Clinton was offering a completely different judicial philosophy and would have offered very different nominees. This was in the hands of the American people, and I can't think of a better place for that to be. And the American people chose the president they wanted to make this appointment, and I think and hope that members of the Senate will respect that it was placed in the hands of the American people, and that they'll give Judge Gorsuch every consideration, give him that up-down vote. And in so doing, I still continue to hope that we'll see bipartisan support and orderly consideration so that Judge Gorsuch can become Justice Gorsuch, and the American people will be proud every day that he's on the court.
We are speaking with Vice President Mike Pence. I have to take a brief commercial break, and I know you're swamped, but if you can hang on for a couple of more minutes when we get back, I would appreciate it. I have a couple of things I want to ask. Great. Above and beyond the nomination of Judge Gorsuch. We'll take the break and be back in just a second and continue with the Vice President. Don't go. And we're back with the Vice President, Mike Pence, former governor of Indiana. I want to move on to the domestic agenda here. The triumvirate of Obamacare, replace and repeal, tax cuts, and the infrastructure. And I guess the thing that interests me most here is the infrastructure. That's $1 trillion that is being talked about here over 10 years, coming off Obama's $700-800 billion infrastructure bill, which there was no infrastructure addressed with that. where does the money come from, and what kind of projects, and what are its prospects legislatively?
Well, let's be clear. What the president said first and foremost is that we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. And we're going to do all those things at the same time. The president dispatched me to meet with members of Congress shortly after the election. We've been working earnestly. I was back on Capitol Hill last week, and those discussions and negotiations are going forward. And we're looking forward to Dr. Tom Price being confirmed as Secretary of HHS, and you'll see that plan come forward that will not only repeal Obamacare's mandates and taxes that are driving up premiums across the country over 100% in some jurisdictions, but you're also going to see a plan that harnesses the power of the free market to drive down the cost of health insurance for Americans. But that's all coming. By this spring, we're going to be talking tax relief, tax reform. President Trump's committed to cutting taxes across the board. Frankly, also making some changes in our tax code that take away the benefit companies have when they pull up stakes and move jobs overseas. But getting the economy moving again is key. But in the midst of all of that, we'll be doing a couple of other things, including rebuilding the military after years of neglect, and we'll be looking for funding from the Congress to do that. But on the infrastructure side, the American people know that they elected a strong leader in President Trump, but I can tell you also they elected a builder. This is someone who, as you know, you've known him for many years, Rush, is someone who is very impatient with the crumbling infrastructure that he sees at our airports, that he sees on too many roads and bridges across the country. And so we're looking at a broad range of options to make resources available to states and local communities to rebuild the infrastructure of this country. But remember, we're not just talking about public money here. One of the things Indiana did. Well, one of the things Indiana did. All of this is on the drawing board right now in terms of financing. But one of the things the state of Indiana did was harness private sector funding. It's called public and private partnerships to build infrastructure. When I was governor of Indiana, our state was recognized as a national leader in this area. So there's a whole range of ways that we can get at the resources in the short term and in the long term. But more than anything else, I think in President Trump, you have someone that knows that roads mean jobs. The right infrastructure in America will support growth and opportunity all across the country, and we're committed to finding ways to do all that.
There's no question that a lot of airports, roads, bridges need to be rebuilt and modernized. There's no question. Let me ask you about private money and how it works. Private money is private money. Are you offering equity in these projects in exchange for the money? Tax breaks? What incentives are you offering private sector people, and I assume they're moneyed people, to help the federal government in rebuilding and modernizing some of these things?
Well, let me just say, stay tuned. This is something we're working with members of Congress on legislation even as we speak, and we're considering all of the above. But what you have in President Trump, whether it be straight out appropriations or public and private partnerships, is a president who wants to get this economy moving again, and he wants to get America rolling again. And he knows that having the condition that we have at many of our major airports, having the condition of too many of our roads and bridges across the country is not going to support a growing American economy. And so we're going to work with members of Congress about the best way to do that in a fiscally responsible way, and we'll have those details for you in the days ahead.
Mr. Vice President, you, the president, are you surprised to any extent at all at the vitriol and the intensity of the opposition coming your way, not just from the Democrats, from some of the American people, from the media, at virtually every turn? Is this something you expected? Is it worse or not as bad as you expected? You have plans to deal with it?
Well, what I'll tell you is I've been very moved at the outpouring of support from people all across the country for President Trump's decisive leadership on a broad range of issues. I had the privilege a week ago of speaking to the March for Life in front of 50,000 largely young people on the National Mall, and to see their enthusiasm for a president who kept his word, standing for the sanctity of life. it was deeply moving to me to see people that came to the inauguration from all over the country. I can't even describe to you what this grandson of an Irish immigrant felt as I raised my right hand and looked out over that sea of people cheering this president on, this strong leader who's determined to bring real change to Washington, D.C. And with regard to Americans that disagree with our agenda, that's their every right. We respect their right to be heard from. I will tell you the negative media coverage that we've gotten from many quarters, present company accepted, has been striking to me. I have to tell you that in all of my life, there was always a grace period, right, for new presidents coming in. I think they call it a honeymoon, right, where the media gives a new administration a chance to come in and start to do what they do. And boy, if there was a honeymoon, it was pretty short. I really don't remember that. And yet, what's so inspiring to me is in President Trump, you have someone who's turned his face like flint against the wind, as the saying goes, and he's driving forward on all of the policies that he promised the American people he would do. And I think that's the reason why people all across the country, millions of your listeners across the country, are so heartened by this, the early days of this administration. I'm just telling you and telling all of them, we're just getting started. We are in the promise-keeping business, and we're going to continue to support the president in every way as he keeps his word to the American people, and we will make America safe again. We will make America prosperous again. And as he loves to say, we'll make America great again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President. I appreciate that. We got a limited time here. I just have to tell, last time I spoke to the president, he asked me if I was still as strong as I used to be, still booming the ball. Tell him yes. He'll know what that's about. It's the golf course.
He's going to make you prove it on the golf course.
Also, just to give you a heads up, I'm not asking you to respond, just giving you a heads up. Media is reporting that 2 Republicans, one of them Susan Collins, have announced they're going to vote against Betsy DeVos at education. I'm not asking you for a response because I got 3 seconds to thank you for showing up. It's great to talk to you, and we'll see you next time. That's right, a man, a legend, a way of life. Again, a thank you to Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States. His first radio appearance following a nomination of Judge Neil Gorsuch to the United States Supreme Court. It is true. Apparently, it is not fake news. 2 Republican senators have announced that they just can't vote for Betsy DeVos, who is Trump's nominee for Secretary of Education. One of them is Susan Collins of Maine. I haven't had a chance do you know who the second one is? I haven't had a chance to find the second one. That 2 Republicans, that probably is going to be close to the majority on that committee, which means you would have to find a couple of Democrats to make up the difference. And the way the Democrats are looking at this, they'll be happy with 1 scalp. And if they could deny 1 nominee, minimum 1 nominee, well, I know she's out of committee. Oh, she is out of committee. You're thinking she's out of committee. Okay. Well, then there's a little bit bigger margin that she has. But they would still like to claim a scalp. At least 1. They would consider that a success story for their fundraising. So we will keep a sharp eye as this unfolds. But back to the phones now to Anna in Tucson, Arizona. I'm glad you waited.
Yes, good afternoon, Professor.
Thank you. Great to hear from Lisa Murkowski from Alaska is the other senator. It's interesting. They're both women who are not going to vote for Becky for DeVos. Anyway, Anna, what's up? What's happening?
I have a question for you, Professor.
Yes.
What happens if we invoke the nuclear option to make sure that the judge gets his approval? Can we ever take it back?
Well, it involves a rules change, and you could always try to change the rules and go back to 60 votes on confirmations, but nobody knows how that would go. But once you invoke it, it really does involve a rules change. It has to be the Senate Majority Leader can pretty much make it happen, but it's almost like the horse is out of the barn.
Yes, I wondered why they never tried to change the rules back when they knew that they didn't have the majority anymore.
Well, because you can't change the rules when you're not the majority.
Right, but that's true. That's true. We won the election, and we already had
right.
The
now they're faced with living what they did to help themselves at the time. You know, people warned Harry Reid not to do it. Democrats said, "Dingy, don't do this," because these guys are going to eventually run the Senate again, and then they're going to have this out of the way. They're going to be able to ramrod their nominees through. And Dingy said, "I don't care. I'm not going to be there when that happens. I'm going to retire before that happens, and I want to get Obama all the judges he wants because that'll take care of generations of liberalism in the courts." And that's what he did. And
typical selfish Democrat.
Oh, selfish, typical, absolutely right.
Yes. So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think we would invoke it?
I don't think we want to. Now, Trump said today that he told, well, again, I don't know if this is fake news or not. It's reported in the media that Trump told McConnell to go nuclear. And that did happen? Okay. Well, he said it. Yeah, okay, I didn't mean gave him an order, but he signaled to McConnell that if that's what it takes, do it. Go nuclear. My sense is, Anna, it really is, my sense is that McConnell would have no problem doing it, but if he can avoid it, he would love to, because I think there are senators who really have a reverence for the time-honored rules and traditions and don't want to nuke them, which is what Dingy Harry did. And if they could get Gorsuch confirmed without doing it, I think that would be their first priority. And it looks like it might be possible because, as the vice president said, there are already 7 senators, 7 Democrats, who have announced that they will not filibuster Gorsuch, meaning they will not participate in an effort to deny him 60 votes. And they are Richard Blumenthal, Democrat, Connecticut, Chris Coons, Democrat, they're all Democrats, Delaware, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Joe Manchin, West Virginia, Claire McCaskill, Missouri, John Tester of Montana, and Dick Durbin of Illinois. As I said, all but Durbin face challenging re-elections in 2018, and that's one of the reasons why. But that means with these 7, they only need one more Democrat to announce they won't filibuster. And if the Republicans stay unified, which they will on this nominee, then McConnell won't have to go nuclear.
Good. Excellent.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. I'm happy to answer the question. A brief obscene profit timeout and a quick return. Don't go away. This is interesting. Mike Flynn hijacked the White House press briefing shortly after it began. Mike Flynn's a national security advisor. Here's the first soundbite.
Recent Iranian actions involving a provocative ballistic missile launch and an attack against a Saudi naval vessel conducted by Iran-supported Houthi militants underscore what should have been clear to the international community all along about Iran's destabilizing behavior across the entire Middle East. The recent ballistic missile launch is also in defiance of UN Security Council Resolution 2231, which calls upon Iran not to undertake any activity related to ballistic missiles designed to be capable of delivering nuclear weapons, including launches using such ballistic missile technology.
This is important, folks. I'm going to explain after the next bite when Flynn, i.e. the Trump administration, put Iran on notice.
The Trump administration condemns such actions by Iran that undermine security, prosperity, and stability throughout and beyond the Middle East, which places American lives at risk. President Trump has severely criticized the various agreements reached between Iran and the Obama administration, as well as the United Nations, as being weak and ineffective. Instead of being thankful to the United States in these agreements, Iran is now feeling emboldened. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
This is serious stuff. I mean, the guy goes in there and leads off the press, well, actually interrupts the press secretary. Maybe he kicked it off, but it happened early on, putting Iran on notice. Now, what is the meaning of this? Well, let's go back to the campaign. Remember during the campaign, a number of people kept asking Trump, are you going to rip up the Iran deal? You're going to rip it up? It's a bad deal. Everybody knows that Obama just authorized Iran to get nukes. And Trump was non-committal about tearing it up. I'll tell you what I think was going on. And in fact, we've heard Trump actually praise certain aspects of the Iran deal. My theory, and you have learned by now not to doubt me. My theory is that rather than rip this up and start over, wait until they cheat, because that's a given. It is a given that the Iranians are going to cheat. So put the onus on them for backing out of the deal. When they cheat, you put them on notice and say, okay, you guys have blown this deal up. To hell with this deal. You're cheating on it, and that's that. Because let's be honest, the CIA, part of the Obama CIA wanted this deal. Part of the Obama State Department wanted this deal. Remember, we're a divided country. You got leftists in this country that think Iran wants to nuke up to protect themselves from us. It's our problem. It's our fault. So rather than tackle this, the Trump administration realized they're going to cheat on it. Don't go through the rigmarole of ripping the thing up and practically having to start over. Just wait till they cheat. And that, I think, is exactly what's happened here. I also think it's a smart move. Here's Fred in Cleveland. About a minute and a half, Fred, but I wanted to get to you. I know you can do it in a minute and a half because I know what you want to talk about. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'll make it as quick as I can, Rush.
I know you can do it.
I got through to you 8 years ago, right after Obama won, and I predicted the death of liberalism if he succeeded through his presidency. And I think we're seeing it. I think the exposure around the world, France, Britain, everywhere you look, liberalism is slowly losing ground. And the reason is that when things get serious, there's no room for liberalism. It's a myth. It has no cause or effect. So when lives are at stake and when the American people are in danger, liberalism goes out the window. And reality sets in, and that's Trump. Well, I think his actions over the next few months will continue to prove to the globe and to the American people that liberalism doesn't work.
Well,
Feel-good doesn't work.
I agree with you. Liberalism doesn't work, but it's got to be called out. The failures that you're talking about, Brexit, the crumbling economies around, people have to be told this is because of liberalism. It's because of the Democrats. It's because of the policies of Obama. You can't just leave this stuff for people to assume and figure out. Because people, I have learned, they're not comfortable going ideological. They just aren't. And to me, it's a concerted effort to instruct or teach or force press ideology and its awareness on people. Because they just are not going to realize. They're just going to say, well, these people's policies aren't working. No, they've got to be told why. And that's how you prevent them from winning in the future if you do it right. By the way, I see Beyonce is pregnant with twins, ladies and gentlemen. Reportedly, Jay-Z is the father of one of them. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And we will be back here revved and ready to do it all over again tomorrow, 21 hours from now. See you then.